us today from the city of beautiful water, up Buffalo Way, is Kent Daniel Bentkowski. The website is the controversyypapers.net. Isn't it, Kent?
Yes, it's controversyypapers.net. And as you mentioned, I am Kent Daniel Bentkowski. I am a research journalist from Buffalo, New York. And I concentrate on research-based papers instead of news-based papers.
What would be the difference? I mean, I think I know, but how do you differentiate between that?
Well, the difference is that with the research papers, I strive for timeless type of information that is important today and will be important a year from now. Sometimes when we report the daily news, oftentimes we find that within a few days that information becomes obsolete. Mm-hmm. And so primarily that's the difference.
Ken, I'm interested in what you do, I should say rather the methodology. Do you frequent libraries, and if so, do you also avail yourself of some of the databases out there like LexisNexis or Wilson?
Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, I have a large reference library that I do maintain at my home here, and I haven't had to go into a library in the past several years because of this. 98% of what I'm able to do is either through these books that I have on hand or information that is available on the Internet itself.
One last question, too, if I could, about the way in which you do things. I find that it is still, and I'm going to assume you're going to agree with me when you tell me about the library you have, that it's nice to rely on electronics to retrieve information. There are some serious Achilles heels there, either deliberate or, by design, or I should say just by the design of being on the grid. And that one of the best sources of information we should never, ever forget is that which appears between two hardcovers. How do you feel about that?
Well, I agree with that. Back in October 2006, Buffalo had a very serious snowstorm where we received over 2.5 feet of snow in the course of 2 days. My electricity was out for 6 days during this time period. So I was forced to rely upon my fireplace for warmth and my on-site library to continue my research.
I was curious because you mentioned there's a number of places where people would be able to read your work. I mean, not only on your website for sure, but you have stuff that's on Rents and David Icke's new site, Village Voice. But what's really got me interested, and I got to ask you about this, is what common ground did you and Joel Skousen find?
Well, actually, that was a paper that I did that was entitled, Will You Survive the Coming Financial Crash? Going back to the 1980s, the early part of the decade, when I got out of high school in 1981, I went to college and I became an investment banker. So as part of my research with the controversy papers, I do concentrate on financial matters. And that is specifically what Joel put on his website.
Okay, all right. And again, I'm curious, being an investment banker, we always talk about with the guests when people get it, when the epiphany happens. Were you aware of the banking scam while you were an investment banker?
Actually, I was in the process of waking up, and my experience working for the company that I worked for was part of this awakening process. I came into it believing that the markets were a function of supply and demand, left that experience, I left it with the idea and the proof that that was completely untrue.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you this, do you miss it?
No, not at all.
All right. What I want to do is, well, I tell you what, we're going to do something specific here today, obviously, and hopefully you'll return next month and we'll go on. But really, with the genesis of the website, the Controversy Papers, what did you have in mind when you began it? And by the way, since life is organic, is it going in the direction that you first had planned, or has it gone somewhere else?
That is a very interesting question. Actually, when I started this, I wanted to come public with the information that I had accumulated through having family become part of the Illuminati. I had a female cousin who married a man who is involved with the Bush crime family, as I refer to them, and also the Rothschild family. So I wanted to not continue to maintain my silence because I realized about 3 years ago that if I did that, I would become an accessory after the fact to real crimes that these people were committing. So I started the Controversy Papers with this idea, to go public with the knowledge I had accumulated in the past 25 years. And the direction that this has taken has surprised me in a number of ways. First of all, the matter we're going to discuss today, the Eyes Wide Shut Occult Symbolism report that I published on March 19th, 2006, that report ended up becoming the most popular of all the Controversy Papers, and I have nearly 400 of them up on that website.
Well, we're going to talk about that today. One other question before we leave it, though, because we may not visit this today or soon again. When you spoke about the Rothschilds, as far as you know, are they pretty much confined to the continent of Europe? I mean, are there Rothschilds that you know of in the United States that have import?
Yes. My personal research has shown that the Rothschilds, much like many other families in these elite bloodlines, change their names as they move from continent to continent. And in the United States, the Rothschild family is known as the Rockefellers.
Whoa. Whoa. That's a blockbuster. I haven't heard that before.
Yeah, that's, it's quite controversial, but nevertheless, it is true.
Well, I always wondered about their origins. I mean, it usually seems, even when you get into exposés, you pick up the story with John Dee, late 19th century in Cleveland. But there had to be a before that. I mean, I know that probably goes back to New York, I think, prior to that. But you never really find the beginning of the beginning, if you know what I mean.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, and I often wonder, too, and I don't get uptight about this, whether Rockefeller had some Jewish origins as well. And if, in fact, as you state, they share bloodlines with the Rothschilds, I guess that's your answer.
Yes. In fact, just to address the idea of Christian versus Jew, these people are practicing Satanists and Luciferians.
Yep.
So outwardly, they may present themselves as a Christian or a Jewish individual or family, but behind the scenes, the spirituality that these people follow and project is, as I said, satanic and Luciferian in its nature.
I'm glad you said that, and we didn't discuss this to agree on before you came on. And so I certainly didn't prompt you, and why would I think I could? But I'm glad you said that of your own volition, because people getting hung up in it's this group, it's that group, it's this group, this is the group, that's the group. And what I'm telling people is, like, lose all that, because what you're getting caught up in is the left hand wiggling and the right hand wiggling, and you don't see who the hands belong to. Would you agree with that statement?
Yes, absolutely. People are trapped into this left-right paradigm, or this dualism paradigm, where they are hung up, as you just said, on issues of this or that, us or them. And basically, this does not wash in terms of the bigger picture here. These people may present themselves as this Christian or Jewish religion, but the fact of the matter is that they do this on purpose to confuse the public and to misdirect them and to push them into directions where answers are never discovered.
Well, that's the best questions to ask, the ones that can never be answered.
Yes, and that's another thing that I try to focus on in my writing, are the issues that most other people do not want to touch or talk about.
Well, I understand why the topic of Eyes Wide Shut should be, let's call it, popular. You know that when something is prurient and sexually charged in nature, you're going to get a good deal of attention. But there's something beyond that in this situation. That was only a trapping of what really is much more nefarious and I would say evil, and that is the body of individuals, and you're going to tell us whether that's just in the United States or whether it's global, who are so powerful and rightfully so, probably know that they're above the law. And I think, as Joseph Conrad tried to tell us in Heart of Darkness, that when that happens, it's usually that humankind only does one thing, and that is to get involved in debauchery. So, one, is this Eyes Wide Shut a manifestation of the way that these elites entertain themselves, if you will? And even though we saw this supposedly in the United States, this isn't just confined to us, is it?
Yeah, that is true. This is a global situation. And in terms of the movie itself, the movie was primarily filmed in England. Mm-hmm. They, even though they used American actors in this movie, it still was filmed in England, and the sites and the mansion and so forth, all of these sites are in England. And so this represents the function of the global aspect of this group.
There were two movies I found very disturbing. I mean, you talk about slasher movies, and that's just garbage. You talk about, say, Hitchcock stuff, and it's just wonderful suspense, but it doesn't leave you so much with a hangover, if you know what I mean.
Right.
In this situation, the one movie that was really, just chilling to my soul was Angel Heart. And then this one comes in right after that, both dealing interestingly with what we might consider satanic in its roots. When you get done with both those movies, you kind of can't shake them. I mean, that was my feeling. When you saw it for your first time, Kent, do you remember what you felt emotionally or spiritually?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. What happened here is my wife and myself, we had a movie night, and we had some of our friends and some of our close family members come over, and I was interested in showing them Eyes Wide Shut just to see what the perception would be, and just to see what they would pick up in seeing this film. When I saw it for the first time, I concur with your assessment 100%. It chilled me to the bone. It chilled my soul. And it completely devastated me because I understood that this is showing truth in this film. And when I showed this on this particular movie night, no one in the room except for me understood what was going on. So after the film, I kind of gave a little bit of a talk, and I outlined some of the themes of the movie. And my friends and family members were just completely surprised and shocked at how much had been embedded into this movie. And it truly is a treasure trove of occult symbolism.
Well, do you want to start taking off some of the elements that are there, which you have revealed in your article, and then the folks can read that. And by the way, do you have Eyes Wide Shut addressed in any other work on the net?
No, just in this one piece. And where your listeners can find this piece called Eyes Wide Shut, Occult Symbolism, is you go to the Controversy Papers, which is controversypapers.net. And then on the front page, on the right-hand column, is a series of special reports. And what they're looking for is the March 19th, 2006 entry, Eyes Wide Shut, Occult Symbolism, and it says Most Popular next to it. As I mentioned a moment ago, that is the most popular piece of all that I have written so far and published on the net. So that's where they can find this report. Now, to begin talking about the movie, let me begin by saying this. The most fascinating and yet the most disturbing part of this film, which is the ritual that Dr. Bill Hartford sneaks into, and this is Tom Cruise's character, sneaks into this mansion where this Illuminati sex magic ritual is going on. And this is not addressed in any part of this film's DVD packaging. It wasn't a part of any of the interviews that were given by Stanley Kubrick before the film was finished, or by Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, the two stars of the movie, after it was finished. It is not discussed in any way, shape, or form, and this movie is presented as being sexual in nature in terms of its themes. However, when you look at the underlying symbolism, what we find is that this sex issue is merely window dressing, if you will, for the larger issues beneath, which are the occult symbolism aspects of the film. For example, at the beginning of the film, we find that there is a Christmas party that is being held. And in my report, I have actual screenshots from the DVD so that all of this is depicted. What happens in this Christmas party is that they have pentagrams hanging on the wall for Christmas decorations, and there is a drug overdose that takes place in a bathroom upstairs. This is going to come into play later in the film and is actually foreshadowing. We also see the character that Nicole Kidman plays is oftentimes shown in front of mirrors in this movie, in her bedroom, in her changing room, and so forth. Now, the interesting thing about this is that the character in the film is named Alice Harford, and Alice Harford is a allusion or an allegory related to the Alice in Wonderland books. The Alice in Wonderland or he's also known as the Alice through the looking glass. And the looking glass is a mirror, you see.
Mm-hmm.
Also, in this Christmas party, there is a very unusual Christmas wreath that is hanging on the wall. And it actually is a series of 3 separate occult symbols that are put together to create this wreath. We have the as above, so below, and also something called the Vyzygoth Pisces symbol, which is a intersection of 2 circles. And you can see these symbols in this report as well.
Hold on right there, if I could.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not sure that people are watching this, and I would think that it would be good to do so, and perhaps they're trying to hit it right now. So while that might be happening, I do want to bring you back because I think I understand what you meant when you said you have the above and the below, and that's also at times known as the Baphomet pentagram, is it not? How does that fit in?
Yeah, how that fits into things is that they believe, these Satanists and Luciferians, they believe that the man should be a mirror of the universe, and the universe should be a mirror of the man. So, once again, we have the mirror symbolism going on.
And you said the Vyzygoth Pisces, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. What does that also take the shape of?
Okay.
You mean the fish, or?
This is a shape that is formed by 2 intersecting circles, and if you turn it on its side, you get the shape of a fish.
All right. So that we also will recognize as what adorns some cars whose drivers are supposedly Christian. Would that be correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And so
that symbol is an ideogram which represents the vagina of the goddess, or the vessel from which all human life emanates.
Now, before you go any further, this is really interesting. Have you gone through Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma?
Yes, I have.
All right, there's that one page, I think it's 282, and you can read that online. Does the use of that Vyzygoth Pisces, is that another kind of, shall you say, sardonic wink and an elbow amongst the Luciferians that, guess what, these Christians are going to use these symbols. For instance, Pike in 1878 writes the book and has the graphics in there, which include the Star of David. And Protestants would be very well aware of this, as well as Catholics, that long stem P, whose shaft is bifurcated with the occult X. You see it all over church bulletins and such. So what I'm asking you, Kent, was this another case of perhaps Christians absorbing what actually was occult in nature?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, as we go through some of the symbols that are associated with Christianity, we do find that there is this transfer that takes place where these seemingly innocent or seemingly innocuous type of symbols are presented, and the people who use them have no idea that they originate from pagan or satanic or Luciferian doctrine.
Yeah, it would seem to us, here's a good example also, not to dwell too much on this, but the whole idea about, for instance, Christmas. We were always told, they moved the holiday from when Christ's birth was actually, when it actually occurred. We've moved it next to one of the pagan holidays, the winter solstice, to make the pagans feel a little more comfortable about coming over to the Christian side, when in essence it was the other way around, wasn't it? Yeah,
that's correct.
So, here's another example of, I don't mean to be crass about this, but it's like, once again, folks, the joke is on us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. What they do is they put these symbols into the world, and they charge them magically by using magical ritual and magical incantations and so forth to issue forth these symbols into the world. And they believe that this empowers them further and allows them to not only continue to maintain their power, but as we go through the years, actually that they accumulate more and more power based on this concept.
You had mentioned there were 3 symbols, and I don't know if I caught the third one. Can you just enumerate them again?
Okay, as I said, it was the number 1, the as above.
Right.
Number 2, the as below.
Okay.
And number 3, the Vesica Pisces.
I got you. Above and below being different. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And if you put the as above and the so below together, you get the Star of David. and
that's right.
That's where that comes from.
And at this point, folks, if you want to ask questions of Kent, please do so. Using Hotmail, it's Vyzygoth@hotmail.com, and if you're going to use an IM service, then it's MSN, and it's Vyzygoth. I want to talk about the website, but before we do that, I don't know if I've been unconsciously ignorant or derelict in not bringing up what we're really talking about. And this I did ask you yesterday. When we talk about this, it may be a brotherhood. I think it's also a religion. And if you had told me about this 10 years ago, I would have said you were a lunatic because of my dealings with some of the porch initiates. But really what we're talking about is the network, the global network of high-degree Freemasonry, is it not?
Yeah, absolutely. As we find, many of these people are very high-level Freemasons. And in terms of that, Stanley Kubrick himself was an initiate of the Illuminati mystery school. So what he was actually attempting to do through this film, I believe, is to open up the eyes of more of the public to what is and what has been going on. And by doing so, he fell under tremendous danger and was actually murdered for doing the same thing that Mozart did with his Magic Flute opera, where he exposed at the end of the 1700s and the 1790s the secrets of Freemasonry in this Magic Flute opera.
Could you, is there one reference in particular or a book you could point to that would chronicle that whole situation with Mozart?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In fact...
And is that on your site as well?
This book, I will put it up on my site when we're finished with the interview, but it is not there at the moment.
Okay.
This book is called The Magic Flute Unveiled, Esoteric Symbolism in Mozart's Masonic Opera. The author is Jacques Chalier, I believe it's pronounced, and that's Challey. And this is produced by Inner Traditions publisher, and it's a very fascinating book because what it does is it goes into the actual symbolism of this opera, and then at the back of the book it has the actual opera broken down scene by scene, and it describes everything from the music to the sets to the costumes to the characters and what the characters are saying through the dialogue or the lyrics to the opera section.
Well, thanks for putting that up. And since we are talking about the website. What else can you tell people about it? I think you also would consider it, not that I'm saying this, not you, but a clearinghouse for reasonable information for people. Would that be true?
I try to do that, and I hope that this website is looked upon in that way, because I take a tremendous amount of care in doing the research that I do. I've been looking into these things for 27 years now, so I'm not just some Johnny-come-lately who decided to throw up a website and proclaim myself an expert in these matters. This is based on personal experience. This is based on almost 3 decades of research experience and a tremendous amount of books that are in my private library go into all of this writing that I do. So what I hope is that when people come to the controversy papers, that they understand that what they're looking at is the product of many, many years of knowledge, learning, and awakening.
When did you get it?
Well, actually it was on May 5th, 1980, was the day of my awakening. And at that time, I was working as an assistant librarian in our local county library system here in Buffalo, New York.
Oh, man after my own heart.
And I requested the wrong book from the main library, got myself into a ton of trouble for doing that. And I said at this point, something's going on here. Why are they so upset that I requested a book on the Trilateral Commission?
Oh, no.
And I'm talking about Holly Sklar's book called Trilateralism. So I requested this book from the main branch. I was working in one of the outlying branches, and I got into a ton of trouble for doing that. And when I got into that trouble, I'm like, oh man, something's going on here. I got to check into this. And so that is the circumstances that led to my awakening, and it's been my life, that is, has never been the same since.
That's what everybody says, but it's for the better, honestly. And,
yeah, I would much rather be educated and knowledgeable about what's happening in the world instead of sitting here in blissful ignorance, watching my TV every night and believing that every politician is honest and every rich person is a philanthropist at heart and all of that type of thing.
If I can go back to discussing 2 artists with you, beyond what we've said about Mozart, but I'm looking, one, at Kubrick, and then I want to ask you something about Lewis Carroll / Charles Dodgson.
Okay.
All right, you're pretty secure and certain in the fact that Kubrick was basically giving a wink and a nod to the guys who usually give us the wink and the nod. And the reason I'm saying it is because, as you mentioned before, that there's a sexual icing, if you will, veneer to what's going on, and most of the John Q. public, being somewhat interested in tawdry things, will stay there and not go any further. Would that be correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, that is correct.
So did Kubrick build this in? In other words, I'm sure, let's just say this. Maybe we can assume, and we've done things, Kent, with an Australian John Valentini about finding actual depictions of the numbers 9 and 11 in movies. Some of them are very, very interesting as to why that would happen. Some are maybe coincidence. Not everybody has to understand it's being done. Just one person can do it. I mean, this doesn't have to be a widely known conspiracy. And if we can figure out perhaps, or take for granted that Cruise and Kidman didn't know about it, then could a Kubrick put that those symbols on the wall, being something a little, shall we say, superfluous or ancillary, or even kind of subconsciously? Do you think that's what did it?
Well, actually, in terms of that, when I looked at the movie, I saw things in a much different way than my wife, for instance. She looked at it as kind of like a sex story, as you had just mentioned, and there is this very pervasive theme of sex that does run throughout this movie, and we could spend a half an hour just talking about that one issue alone. However, this group has a saying that they do things for people who have eyes to see and ears to hear. And that refers to the inside information that is passed through these types of films, books, TV shows, and so forth. That is a message to the initiates, the insiders in these groups. And what I believe happened was that Stanley Kubrick felt that he was very successful throughout his career, and he wanted to impart a little truth into a film that was based on a book that came out in 1926. It was a book called Dream Story. And there is an aspect of this story that relates to the reality versus the dream world, or the esoteric versus the exoteric.
You also include two provocative images. One is, I guess, of an older cover for Alice Through the Looking Glass, and also for The Wizard of Oz.
Right.
Now, can we now assume, this blows me away, because, at least with Baum's work, The Wizard of Oz, we are now looking at three levels of understanding. Most of us think it was unique with regard to symbolizing, I guess, the financial matters and the monetary matters of the time, and the personages that were fighting for bimetallism or whatever. But he goes into something beyond. So here's where I'm going. Can I now look at Lewis Carroll, Charles Dodgson, and Baum, both as perhaps knowing the handshake?
Yeah. Yes, I believe so. And especially with The Wizard of Oz. That book, that film, that series of books, that whole story is nothing but an occult story presented to the public as a child's fairy tale. But it's much, much more than that.
Also, I had read, of course this was years ago now, and I got to rethink this too. I was reading a rather, I wouldn't say it was a defense or apologetics on behalf of Lewis Carroll, but knowing what he was involved with, I'm not assuming it was as innocent a situation as perhaps, I was reading about. In other words, he was a photographer, was he not?
Yes.
And what was his favorite subjects?
Children, I believe, right?
Yeah. Now I'm starting to wonder, from what they just said, what they said as being somewhat, I don't want to say pristine, but up and up. And you know how children factor in this whole world as well. It just gives me the creeps, and I have to look back at that and say, all right, what was the story with that? So anyway, gives you a whole new look at not only Alice, but also the mirrors as well. And isn't it interesting, too, that mirrors really don't give you the appearance of reality. Everything is reversed. And that people, I don't know if this, I don't think this has ever gained any ground, But I think I've read at least one inventor who created a mirror that would give you an absolute accurate representation of how you would look to someone else. And that never seemed to take, you know what I mean? It just never seemed to go anywhere. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, is there something, I'm not trying to get too spooky about this or tinfoil hattish, but then you have to wonder, if there isn't something there, either deliberately or just by coincidence about the nature of a mirror, which, a lot like clowns, it seems innocent, but I think it also has always held subconsciously to a lot of people an air of, at the very best, mystique and even potentially some evil.
Yeah, definitely. In fact, to take that one step further, in terms of occult symbolism, the mirror is a symbol of the human soul.
Uh-huh.
So not only are we seeing reflections of reflections, if you will, but we're also seeing a much deeper symbolism going on that relates to the deepest part of the human being, which is our soul.
And that movie did that because probably the one place where people, look, all right, I'm going to just say it. Everybody has heard tales about the seductive nature of porno and how it's there and you peek with one eye or your hands over your eyes, but there's that exploration, and oftentimes it doesn't say something good about the individual, and it might be some kind of libido that's present in everyone. And this movie did the same thing. It did a great job about taking two people and having them both explore, shall we say, what's forbidden. And I don't think that was. And I got a question for you too. Before we go any further, somebody wants to know: did Kubrick know the handshake, or was he just simply telling on them? He might have known about the handshake, but did he know the handshake?
Oh yeah, as I mentioned, he was an initiate himself.
He was, okay.
Yeah.
And Kent, the other thing is this: could it possibly be? And we've spoken to Alan Watt about this, and Watt has an interesting story too about some of these, or at least one in particular. Shall we say, ball that the Freemasons were throwing. And when he was describing me about the outfits, he was not there, but he had seen the people getting ready to go, and something was said to him, and I said, Alan, it's eyes wide shut, and he said, exactly. So could it be, though, that when we talk about the porch initiates, if you will, the porch members, that it may go beyond 3 degrees, it may go to 32 or 33, and then beyond that is really where it gets bizarre.
Yeah, that is true. In fact, going back to Morals and Dogma again, it says right in that book that the purpose of the porch Blue Lodge Masonry is, the purpose of that is to reflect incorrect interpretation to these people of what all of this symbolism truly is. And I found something else interesting about this too, is that approximately 97% of all Freemasons are trapped into those bottom 3 degrees. And you get a guy who holds the Master Mason degree, and he's like on top of the world. I'm a master, I'm the highest there is. And yet there's like 100 degrees above this guy that he will never see. In fact, when you get to the 33rd degree, you've only finished one of several of these structures, which do go into the low 100s in terms of how many degrees there are. And then there are the many different schools that you can go to. The Scottish Rite, the York Rite, the Rite of Memphis and Mizraim, which is Egyptian Freemasonry, and it just goes on and on and on.
I had a couple of interesting discussions with an individual who was a restaurateur who told me he was a 33-degree Scottish Rite Freemason. And we started talking. In fact, what I was saying about, we were talking about how, things do go bump in the night, and how there is an elite cabal who for generations have always orchestrated global events. And that's how we got around to this, and he thought I meant that Freemasonry was nefarious, and I said, well, what happens if there is, degrees beyond what anybody knows about? And he says, well, that's when he told me I'm a 33rd degree. And I said, have you read Morals and Dogma? He said, no. I said, have you read any of Manly P. Hall's work? He said, no. And he said, but I got something for you. And when he came back with another day or two later, where he had 2 volumes of Mackey's Encyclopedia, which I'd already seen. Mm-hmm. And I said, but you've never read Pike and you've never read Hall. And he said, no. And then I started thinking, well, even if he does know that it goes beyond, well, he's not going to tell me the truth. So it was almost a kind of a pointless discussion after that point. He kept saying to me, they do a lot of good work, the Shriners. I'm going, yeah, I understand that. But what happens if there's something beyond? And that's where it kind of, the common ground ended, and I never really went back again. So,
yeah, you find that all over the internet, too, on these various Freemasonry sites, where they'll have frequently asked questions. Is Freemasonry satanic? Is Freemasonry controlling the events of the world and so forth? And they deny this because my belief is that the people writing the answers to these questions on these websites are not part of that inner crowd, so to speak. And once you do become part of that inner grouping, and I'm talking about the degrees way above the 33rd, you find that there are secrecy oaths that make the lower degree oath look like, tame in comparison.
Yeah. I also...
They will murder you if you reveal the secrets, and it has happened.
Are you referring to an incident that took place near where you live?
Yes, I am. I'm talking about William Morgan in town of Batavia, New York. I'm also talking about Stanley Kubrick. Mozart we touched on.
Mozart was a murder?
Yes. He was poisoned.
Okay. Okay.
And it didn't have anything to do with Salieri and all that business from the movie Amadeus. That is the for public consumption version of events, not the true story.
I'm going to have on later in the month an individual who runs the site Black Racer, Raiser, and on there you will see he does a lot with the ties between Germany and Islam and Germany and Freemasonry. There is, I think, on that site a very interesting picture of some Egyptians. I believe Sadat might be in there, definitely Nasser. But I'm bringing this up because I want to know, and I believe that Alexandria was the hub for that at that time. But somebody's asked a question, and it says, is Egyptian Freemasonry close in the higher degrees to the ancient religions of Egypt? That is, I guess, Ra.
Yes, that is correct.
And also, I think we're realizing too that Mystery Babylon religion and Egyptian sun god worship, of course, are very, very similar, and from that we see, obviously, it going on to this day. And we've talked with other guests, Kent, and if you want to speak this by all means, about even the symbols that are supposed to be so Republican as far as freedom and such in America, and they're all send-ups from occult images, including the woman who's got her armpit sticking up in New York Bay. Columbia. What is that? So, anyway, you would agree that was the case. And have you ever come across anything, and this might get outside your purview, but where there's any kind of speciality, shall we say, about any Freemasonry that does exist, obviously in Egypt, because of all the mojo with the Sphinx and such, the pyramids?
Well, actually, the Egyptian Mystery School happens to be one of my very high interests. And the reason being is that it's just so fascinating that, for example, they could have technology 5, 10, 15, 20,000 years ago that could build these pyramids that we barely have the technology to do today. And how did that come into being? And the whole belief system, and once you start looking into this, you find that these people were dealing with harmonics and magnetism and other principles of science.
Can we assume levitation too? Can we assume that?
Levitation, absolutely. And all of this went into these initiation temples. That's what the pyramids are.
Mm-hmm.
They're not burial tombs. In fact, in none of these pyramids did they ever find anything representing gods that were supposedly buried there. I'm talking about the three main pyramids on the Giza Plateau. And the reason being is that they were initiation temples. And you can buy books that will explain to you the process of initiation that took place inside these pyramids. And that in itself is a very fascinating subject because these initiation rituals have been adapted and are still being used today.
I know we've backed you up to about 7 minutes left, and so if there was someplace you wanted to at least go to or cover before this hour ends for us, I'm going to throw it over to you and make sure that happens.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. In terms of the movie Eyes Wide Shut, we'll go back to that again. What we find in this movie is that even though it's represented as being a sexual type of film in terms of the way it's advertised and so forth, there are other issues going on in this movie, and these issues are mind control. For example, we have a lot of symbolism related to the rainbow that takes place in this film. And the rainbow is an occult symbol that is used to represent the bridge between the living and the dead. So we have a rainbow costume shop, and the shop underneath that is in the film called Under the Rainbow. So these issues of mind control are evoked. In fact, at the Christmas party at the beginning of the film, Dr. Harford is asked if he would like to see where the rainbow ends. And he replies, that depends on where that is, he says. We also find that the Wizard of Oz is evoked through this film as well. And in terms of that, that's a very interesting story, and that relates to the theosophical principles of H.P. Blavatsky. And in just another one of these coincidences is that the daughter of Dr. Bill and Alice Hartford in this movie is named Helena. Helena Petrovna Blavatsky.
Come on, it's a coincidence.
Yeah, just a coincidence. So we find as we go through this film that it's just one thing after another in terms of all of this occult-based symbolism that is either represented symbolically or is directly in your face. In fact, Douglas Monroe, in his book of Druid magic, describes the rainbow as a true sign of magic. It exists in both worlds at once, meaning the world of the dead and the world of the living. One other symbol that I want to talk about briefly is the symbol that is associated with the 33rd degree in Freemasonry, which is the two-headed bird, the two-headed phoenix, with the head pointing in the east and the other head pointing to the west. And what that represents is the rise and the setting of the sun. And so we go back to the sun worship once again, the astrotheological principles. In addition, I wrote a report called Spiritual and Astrotheological Motifs Related to Light. And that's another controversy paper special report that is found in the same place that the Eyes Wide Shut report is found. I would also recommend that any interested listener check into that report as well, because it does pertain to what we're talking about today.
All right. We can hold it there. Can I assume you'll come back and speak with us again next month?
Sure, I'd love to.
Yeah, well, I hope you stay on as a regular, if that's okay. I mean, we'd love to have you. So,
sure, that'd be great.
We've been speaking with Daniel Bentkowski, and the website is controversypapers.com. You can hit it from my website, either on the upcoming shows or on the archived audio. So either way, you'll have no problem getting there. And Ken, thanks very much for coming on with us, and it was great talking to you. You know, this initial interview was really interesting, and I hope more people come your way and get into what you're exposing. So thanks very much.
Well, thank you, Vyzygoth. It's been a pleasure.
All right, we'll see you soon again, okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.